my name is Jason J. Rock Houston. This is Guitarist TV. Um, and we're speaking with Stephen Pearcy Guitarist Erik Ferentinos. Erik, a great place to start, I guess, is today. Asking you how you're doing, because I know a couple months back you had a health scare. You literally had a heart attack on stage. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. About 7 months ago, we were playing a county fair in Ohio,
Yeah.
and I had a medical emergency like right following the show, and it was a bummer. They had to get an ambulance out there, and ended up getting 3 stents, getting emergency heart
Wow.
surgery. 1 minute I was on stage, an hour later I was on the operating table.
All for rock and roll, huh, my friend? I mean, you and
That's
Richie
right.
Fox. Yeah.
But everybody's prayers worked, and I got out of there, the emergency room, in like 3 days, and
Yeah. How
came back
surprised were
home.
you? I mean, had you ever had any kind of heart issues before? Or
Not that I was aware of. I had gained some weight like a lot of people did in the
yeah.
shutdowns, but it is hereditary also. Like both my parents have heart disease,
Oh,
and
wow.
around the
Well,
same age had to get
thank God
stents.
you're doing. Maybe because you're so young still. Could have
Yeah.
went the other way. But so I know a little bit about your story. I know you've been Steven's right hand man for I don't know, at least the last 20 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, over 20 years now. I started playing in his solo band in
Am
2001.
I correct in that how you met him was you live like literally next door and you went up and introduced yourself?
Pretty much. He had moved in across the street from my parents in the late 80s, probably 1987, in Carlsbad. And I've told the story many times, but my mom had sat me down one day and said, "Hey, do you know who Rat is?"
Yeah, yeah,
And of course they were, all over MTV, and I
yeah, yeah.
of course knew who they were. So I go, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, the singer just moved in across the street. Don't tell anybody."
Okay, yeah,
And I was like, "Oh my God."
yeah.
And at the time I had just started playing guitar, and I just really
Wow.
felt that it meant something. Oh, definitely I was meant to be a rock star. If I'm this guy moved in across the street, it all makes sense now. And it was kind of ridiculous, but it did actually work out in a weird way.
Yeah, yeah,
And years later he would have me join the band. But at first I think he had just called me over and asked if I wanted to wash his car, or hey, you want a
yeah,
t-shirt. He's a nice guy. He is nice to everyone.
yeah.
And he probably saw me out there, 15 years old, long hair, and said, "Hey, you want a shirt?" Gave me some Rat
Wow,
Dancing
wow.
Undercover t-shirt or something. "You want to wash my car?" "You want to mow my lawn?" And then he heard me jamming with my friends in the garage, and he offered to record us over at his house. He had a studio, Chris
Yeah.
Hager, that he had built over there, and that's how our relationship kind of began.
Talk about paying your dues. I mean, literally. I mean, kind of doing odd jobs, helping him around his house, and then he finds out you play guitar. And um, whose idea was for you guys to start working? Was it literally him just saying, "Hey, do you like to join my band?" Or "I need a guitar player"?
Yeah, he had he had kind of managed, I guess, or produced a local band of mine for a minute, and kept in contact with me. And when he had his solo band he was starting, he was initially going to call it Nitronic.
Okay, yeah,
And he had mentioned, me playing in it, but I just at the time it was a big unknown for me.
yeah,
And this was the 90s now, and the hair metal thing wasn't happening. I was playing in bands at this point, so I would have to like quit my band to play in this,
yeah,
which in retrospect I should have totally done it right away.
yeah.
But I let fear and of the unknown kind of keep me from it, so I kind of declined the first
Wow,
time around playing with him. I was like, who's gonna even know who it is? He'll probably leave me in some state somewhere.
wow.
And so I said no, and I went on to play with my band a little longer. At this point he had went to call himself Rat,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the other guys had replaced him with Jizzy Pearl and
yeah,
were
yeah,
calling themselves Rat. And so he goes, "Well, if they could do that, I could call my band Rat."
yeah, yeah.
And so there's two Rats going around. And right at that time, he fired his lead guitarist, called me up, and was like, "I need you out here this
Now,
week. We're going to be in
yeah,
Chicago. I need you out here." And I was like, "Man, are you joking me?" And he wasn't. He was serious. I learned the songs the best I could, and I've flew out there with no rehearsals.
Wow.
And next thing you know, I was on a tour bus playing with the Stephen Pearcy band,
Yeah.
and the rest
Wow.
is
Wow.
history.
Yeah, and it's interesting because how big of a Rat fan were you? I mean, once you got to the point where he told you, "Hey, I need you to come out with me," and you decide, "Okay, I'm going to join the band," did you already know a lot of those Rat songs, or did you have to really learn them?
I did not know any of them, to be honest. I mean, I knew them from hearing them on the radio,
Yeah,
the top, or any of the ones that had videos for, I of course saw on MTV, but I never tried to play them on guitar. And I was more of a '90s guitarist, playing more bluesy pentatonic stuff, kind of Alice in
yeah,
Chains,
yeah, yeah. That's
Harry
what was popular at the
Cantrellish. I had the wah pedal,
yeah,
and I really wasn't at the level of a Warren DeMartini by any stretch, but I did play with a lot of attitude,
yeah,
and I always had a good tone and stage presence and stuff. And at the time, he wasn't really playing all Rat stuff. He probably only played Round and Round. He did
yeah.
play the Ugly Three, Lay It Down, Lack, and You're in Love. There was Round and Round. I don't even know what other one he did.
Maybe
Then he
Back for
had like
More or something like
arcade.
that. Yeah.
Maybe, but he had like arcade songs he was doing. He was even doing some songs that I had written for a demo with him
Oh wow.
some years before. He was actually playing with this band at the live show, and people wanted to hear more Rat stuff,
Yeah.
but he just wasn't giving it to them. Yet he was calling it Rat featuring Stephen Pearcy.
Maybe his heart wasn't in it because of all the stuff with the other band, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is it's kind of funny that I know you're quite a bit younger than Steven, and yet you've been his right man hand for like the last 20 years in the band, and you've been the one constant. And what's interesting is if you look at his history with the Rat Band, everybody knows that band was they were constantly feuding with one another, as great as the songs and everything. It's funny, but with his solo band, um, he seems to get along with you guys great. You seem to be
Hmm.
real tight.
Right, and we have Matt Thorne back in the band, who was of Rough Cut
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
name, but he's also the producer slash engineer
yeah,
of the solo records for Steven. So we go to his studio in Burbank, MT Studios, and record those records there. And even back when I had done the first demos for Steven in the mid
yeah.
'90s, I remember going up there to do it to his studio. And so all these years later, 30 years later, he's played in the band throughout the years, but
Oh,
he had
sure,
left
sure.
for some time, and now he's back. He's such a tight player, but an instrumental guy in getting those records done quickly for Frontiers. Where he and I basically we would have a drummer come in, whether it's Greg
Yeah,
D'Angelo or Scott Coogan, and they would record drums to my demos that I made. I would like get rid of the drum machine, let them come in and play the drums, but basically show them what to play. And then Matt and I would take care of the rest. I would do the guitars, he would do the bass, and we would produce Steven's vocal and get the best out of him we could in the short time we had.
yeah.
Because technically we only had like probably 2 weeks per record, whether it
Oh,
was
wow.
Smash or View to a Thrill. We each one only had about 2 weeks. And if it wasn't probably for me doing all the work ahead of time, laying out the music at least, we would not have
Yeah.
met our deadlines, on
Wow,
that.
wow. And I interviewed Chris Hager about a month or so ago, and he was telling me that that's probably the reason Steven calls it the Rat Bastards because you know have different guys coming in and going, but they're all guys that Steven's been friends with, and they're all loyal to him. And
Sure.
yeah,
Well, certainly Chris goes back to the very beginning,
rough
and he was
Ricky Rat.
Steven's. Yeah, Mickey Rat. They were friends right out of high school, playing in San Diego, and Chris ultimately did go up to L.A. with Steven
Yeah,
from down here, as well as Matt. Like they did go up there.
yeah,
The other bassist didn't go,
yeah,
um, and he had a family instead, and these guys went up and made it, ended up like playing Gazaris with Motley Crue as like the house
yeah,
bands.
yeah.
But what's interesting is and we talk about this to this day, but when Matt tells the story about playing in Hollywood at that time, Steven had his struggles back then,
Oh, sure.
and when they had to play 2 shows a night, it was such a raging '80s party going on at the time, as you can imagine, with Motley and Rat. He was a mess by the second performance that they would have to go out. He would typically end up laying on the ground or, hanging on to something trying to sing.
Yeah,
And it bummed out people like Matt and Chris. And so when Rough Cut was getting put together, those guys chose to leave Steven, and
Yeah.
they kind of lost faith in it in a sense.
Wow.
But he's very resilient. He knows when he's made mistakes and he gets back on his feet,
Yeah.
as he's shown many
And,
times.
you know,
And
Steven, you're not the only one that's had a health scare. Steven, recently was battling his cancer and he's come out the other side, thank God. But and he's like you said, he's battled demons like many people over years. Um, it seems like he's been sober the last couple of years. What's that been like? Have you seen a major difference since he's kind of
sure.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I don't remember exactly when he stopped drinking, but it had to have been like,
a couple of years, yeah,
mm, yeah, I mean, I know what in 2019 he had some
yeah,
issues, so it's probably been a solid 3 years, 4 years maybe of not
pretty
drinking, and
amazing,
it's way better when he doesn't do that.
yeah, yeah. And we all have our demons, but what's you mentioned this album, like a lot of people to me, I like all the solo stuff, but I don't know, this is really a focused album to me, and a lot of people really reacted to this. I mean, it did pretty well.
Oh, thank you, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. He basically was like, I got this deal with Frontiers. We're going to go in and record this album. And I'm like, well, what are we going to record? And he had all these like demos that I had sent him basically. And obviously those were included. Chris had a song on there as well. The first song, I Know I'm Crazy, was a Chris
Yeah, yeah,
idea. And then I added a lot to it. But then the rest of the ones were just demos that I had sent to Steven going back over a decade. And so when a few of them, like Jamie and these ones came up, I was like, really? That old idea, but
Lollipop to me sounded like a Van Halen kind of song.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was another one I'd given him many, many years before, and I wasn't certain about it, but he had his ideas for it and he made it happen. And it was well received. And also, I Can't Take It
Yeah, yeah,
was the first single, and that was people were surprised at that, and it came
yeah.
out very well.
Now, I
And
don't know if you can talk about any of what I'm getting ready to ask you, but um, Stephen recently came out and said something about you guys are working on the sixth solo CD. Do you know if that might come out this year, or do you think probably next year? Any
I,
idea?
I I I hope it comes out this year. What he's talking about is we decided we're going to do like an EP,
That's
like
what I was
Do
getting ready
or
to ask.
Die,
Yeah, you and him
kind of
have an
similar to how Rat had their original EP.
yeah.
We're going to do something like that and put a couple of the songs that are floating around, but kind of revamp them a little bit.
Okay.
A song, uh, All That I Want.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
We're actually have maybe we put some real drums on it and fix it up a little bit. And there was a couple of other ones that are out there. A cover song that we just did, and basically just get the 5 songs. And I'm not sure how he's going to go about selling that. We were talking about a couple different ideas
And then
for it.
he's been talking about a legacy album. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that that is through Golden Robot,
Okay.
and that's a deal that he has, which is obviously some kind of best of with unreleased tracks from Rat and so forth. I know that when he moved to Vegas, he had uncovered a lot of stuff in his moving process,
Yeah.
valuable things like that, and he had gone in with Ron Mancuso, I believe,
Yeah.
and was basically transferring a lot of that stuff and getting it ready for that release. So he knows more about it himself,
Okay.
but that's what I
Okay.
heard anyway.
Okay. And then I was wondering, were you part of this album Stripped?
Yeah, I was. That was our live band at the time. I was thinking it was like 2006, and it was Scott Coogan on the
Yeah.
drums, Chuck Wright on bass, Frankie on guitar, and myself. And we had just recently done like a VH1 acoustic tour that was pretty wild. It was like a weird experience. It was us, the band Firehouse, the whole band,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, Don Dawkin, Kip Winger,
Wow.
Janie Lane, the late Janie Lane,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Reb Beach was there also,
Oh, wow.
playing guitar with Kip and also with Don Dawkin.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And then there was Steven, Frankie, and myself, and we were all on the same bus. It was going to be filmed. It was originally going to be a reality show for
Wow.
VH1, but it just somehow that didn't go down, and it ended up
Yeah.
just being like a
CD.
3 week tour that we did, which I wish it was an electric tour. I mean, at the time I wasn't accustomed to doing acoustic stuff, and it was kind of weird. Steven's not really, he had done a great MTV Unplugged back in the day, but they
Yeah.
had a full band doing it with kind of percussion and stuff. When it's just a guitar and the voice, it's really stripped down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So an opportunity came up to do a live record, and I was just going with it. I
yeah.
didn't. I just showed up that day. We all kind
We
of
get
just
paid to
showed
do it,
up.
right? So yeah,
Yeah, and there was a truck outside,
yeah,
and we just went for it. And that's kind of what you hear on that strip thing. It's kind of like a bootleg almost
yeah.
type
Yeah, I
vibe,
wish
but
Rat would put out that unplugged. That was a cool thing they did back in the day.
it
I mean,
was.
Michael Schenker was part of that. Yeah,
He was. And I met him at that time. I was probably 17 then,
wow.
and I went to Irvine Meadows and saw Rat play and had a backstage pass. And I remember going up and meeting Michael Schenker there,
Yeah,
and it was cool. And that was kind of the end of an era in a sense. That was,
yeah,
91 at
and,
that
and,
point.
and talking about doing this for VH1 or whatever it was. I mean, it would have been cool if they would have done some type of thing to go with it, or at least film a video. But it kind of was at the end of the era, as you say, and like
Budget wasn't going
MTV.
into it.
I bet if you flip by MTV, you wouldn't even know it because it's a TV network now. They don't even play music on it.
Right. There's always hope though. You never know. I mean, I know I see a lot of the MTV t-shirts coming back, like Kohl's running,
Yeah,
selling them. And it's like, it makes me wonder if they are going to try to, bring back some of that old
yeah,
format that they had. VH1 was probably the first ones to go to reality
yeah,
TV.
yeah, yeah. I mean, how big of a fan were you of Rat back in the day? I mean, because I mean, Rat was all over radio, and I know I was a huge fan myself. I mean, one thing you could say about Rat, they definitely got great songs.
Yeah, my first memory of Rat was when we had moved. My family had taken me to Los Angeles from New Jersey, where I had spent the first 10 years of my life. And when we went up there, they got a kick out of going to Hollywood just to look at all the weird people. Because
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah,
80s, there was a ton of, the Sunset Strip was just hair bands and so many
yeah.
freaky people out there passing out flyers.
It's not even
My
like that
parents,
now, sadly.
yeah, they enjoy just laughing at those people and going and just driving around. But when I looked out there, I was excited by it all and I wanted to be a part of it. But I remember my parents liked rock music and I had the rock station on and Round came on. So that was kind of the soundtrack of what I was seeing. And it definitely gave a really edgy, cool vibe to the scene for me. So, um, but I didn't have the money to like buy a ton of records as a
Yeah,
kid. My
yeah.
allowance was crap and albums were expensive. They
Oh,
were like
sure.
$15 a piece where kids
More
now
expensive
could just
these
pay,
days. $35 for
yeah,
vinyl. Yeah,
10 but they could pay $10
yeah,
a month and have all the music that ever existed, where I had to really pick and choose what I was buying back then. And so I would tape the radio like a lot of kids that didn't have
oh,
money,
sure, sure. Yeah, you're taking
and
me
so
back. Yeah,
yeah, so certainly Lay It Down and maybe Round and some of those songs. And then I was maybe got a tape from a friend. I think I had Invasion of Your Privacy
yeah,
tape that a friend left over my house, and then it became mine.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, but I wasn't a biggest fan as maybe the people that were 10 years older than me that were
yeah,
like closer to Steven's age were even more so fans.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I loved Motley Crue also, probably even maybe a little more at the time.
yeah.
But meeting Steven was a huge deal and super exciting, and I, of course, knew a good tenant. They have a lot of Rat has a
Oh,
lot of
sure.
hits.
I mean, I bet you were maybe even more of a fan once you became friends with Steven and joined the band, and you kind of realized what great music it really is.
It was an adventure. I mean, at first the people weren't very accepting of me because I certainly didn't have the typical rock look. I was
Yeah.
more, the mohawk or
Fuck yeah,
shaved head thing, and they weren't feeling that at first. Like bands that came later kind of paved the way, whether it's Disturbed or Daughtry or whatever, Cold or whomever bands changed the view on that sort of thing
yeah,
later. But at the time, people were still like, "You don't look like you belong with these guys," and I was only like 27 at the time, so I was
yeah.
younger also, and so I took a lot of crap for a while, and it took some time before they accepted me. And then there was a time in the early 2000s where that music really became unpopular again for
Oh,
some
sure,
time.
sure. Yeah.
And it was kind of around the time of the DC sniper and the station fire in Rhode Island.
Uh,
Like those were all tough,
yeah.
skinny times for everybody. that did this kind of music.
You hung in there, you guys. You're right.
Yeah, everybody hung in there, and I think the regular mainstream rock music just kind of sucked as the
Yeah, yeah,
2000s went on, and people really started to miss the heavy metal hard rock of the 80s, early 90s, and so it started making a comeback, and all of a
sure.
sudden these bands were getting better shows again, and we survived it only in time for COVID to sadly, put the kibosh on that for everyone for a
Yeah,
couple years, and some artists never recovered from that, the older
yeah.
ones
And
had
it's a
to
strange
retire.
thing too, because like, last couple of years, Steven was busy with Rat, constantly touring. He must have had a lot of downtime, but then of course he do his solo shows in between. But
Right.
it's kind of an interesting place that he's probably. It seems to me that he's gone a place in life where probably could make a lot more money doing the Rat thing, but I think he's got a point in life where he's just sick of all the feuding, and
Sure.
he'd rather go out with the guys that he gets along with and just, hey, let's have a good time.
If he was out doing the rat thing, it would probably be for the glamour of playing bigger
Yeah,
venues at the
yeah,
most, because as hard as it may be for the fans to believe, he makes more money doing the solo shows, and the reason for that is because we're such a small operation.
yeah.
The addition of Jason Green was like the biggest thing that we had as far
Wow.
as taking a tour manager with us
Yeah,
now, which is basically handle Steven for the most part,
yeah,
because the rest of us are so self-sufficient.
yeah,
Just tell me when does my flight leave, and
yeah,
what's the hotel we're staying at, and what time do we go on, what time sound check. That's all I got to know. You don't have to worry about me. I'm going to be there, as well as Johnny Monaco and Matt and Scott Coogan. We'll be ready to play. They don't have to worry about us. We don't really need security. I don't need a tech. I don't
yeah,
trust most techs anyway with my
yeah.
my guitar. I don't care. I mean, I go to sound check, make sure everything's good, and then just show up. I really don't need somebody out there. But when it's Rat, they have all these people that are working on this.
Hmm. Oh,
They
sure,
got
sure. Makes
front of
sense.
house monitors,
Yeah,
guitar techs for each guy. They have, and they're flying out these people, or they're having to get a bus, and these expenses get so insane that Steven ends up walking away with a very small amount of money, especially when all the band members and Rat are handing in all these expenses for their Uber and the food they ate
wow.
at the
Yeah,
airport.
yeah.
And who knows,
Hmm.
we're just a lot easier to deal with and don't cost nearly as much
Smaller
of a
operation. Yeah, like you
yeah,
said.
yeah,
Wow. And it seems like probably. I mean, I don't know Stephen, but I'm just saying I've heard him talk over years in interviews. It seems like probably you're one of the few people that he's really gotten close to in life. Maybe only other person I hear him talk that he is ever really close with is Robin Crosby. Working as far as
mhm.
musical partner. Um, and,
Yeah, I would agree, because he did write with Robin
yeah,
most of those early Rat hits with him.
yeah,
Because Warren was a phenomenal soloist,
yeah,
especially for his age. He was
yeah,
really incredible considering that. But and he definitely came up with like the lay it down riff, but
yeah,
he needed the guidance, of these other guys to like put all that together, as
yeah,
to where maybe Robin could put the riffs together a little easier, and then
yeah.
Steven just had a good uh jiving with him,
And,
and same
and
with
it's
me.
interesting, yeah. It's interesting because you and Steven are a little bit different. You're a little bit younger than he is, and the
Yeah.
only reason I bring that up is, as a writer and a guitar player, you definitely got the talent, and I don't think age really has a lot to do with that. It has to do with you know, how you learn to play guitar and if you practice and all that, and you obviously got the goods. But my point is, it's amazing that people always talk about age, and I think the fact that you're so much younger has nothing to do with it. You guys seem to gel. You have a connection. That's what's important.
Right. Well, he's also very young at heart. He's
Yeah,
never
yeah,
grown up. He's still as
yeah,
immature as I get accused of being from my old lady. She's like,
yeah,
"What are
yeah,
you, 15?" And
yeah,
we act like 15-year-olds. We're farting and making jokes, and you have to be that way. It's a
yeah, yeah.
crazy life, and you got to be goofy, or you're not going to survive it. And he's certainly had his share of hard times and
Sure.
bummers, as and my worse than I have even. And but we keep a smile, we keep doing it. It's really the only thing we know how to do. I recently got into the podcasting thing, which kind of fell into my lap. Was
Oh, wow.
the
Yeah.
only other thing I've done in all these years, and that's been a more recent thing. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Classic Metal Show. I have their bumper sticker
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I've heard of that.
But Neely and Chris have been covering the Stephen Pearcy band for 20 years now on their show, and they used to actually make fun of us often.
I know they used to
And I
make fun
can't
of the, the feuding rat, you know.
Oh, everything. The two
Yeah,
rats. I mean, you name it. If you went back on YouTube and went, Classic Metal Show Rat or whatever, I'm sure a lot of episodes will come
yeah.
up where they're talking all kinds of shit. And there was one episode they did called The Sad State of Stephen Pearcy,
Wow.
where they totally like caught some bad show or playing some
Yeah,
audio
yeah,
of it. It was terrible. And I used to really try to like help take that stuff off the internet if it was on there. But he has to want to do that. And he doesn't care most of the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
So, anyways, I was just so mad listening to them tear us apart and knew that this was hurting us. And so at the time I was like, I want to kill these guys. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I'm hearing their voices and I'm picturing these wimpy, dudes. So flash forward, as I'm getting more intel on them and I'm listening to more shows, they start winning me over with their comedy.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. And then when I put out Smash, they really liked it a lot, and then they wanted me to come on the show, and I ended up meeting them. And when I did, I realized that I could not have kicked these guys' ass if
yeah,
it
yeah,
came down. Like Neely looks totally like Dog the Bounty Hunter, and he's
yeah,
equally as armed to the teeth, driving some, Rambo car, Cobra car. And Chris is like gigantor. He's just like he looks like he's from the medieval times, like he should be carrying some kind of bat with
yeah,
spikes coming out of
yeah,
it or something, through some Dungeons and Dragons place. So I could not have won in a fight with these guys. So it's good
yeah,
that they took me on their team and made me a correspondent, if you will,
yeah.
of the classic metal show. And I actually filled in for Neely. Sadly, his brother passed away in
Oh, wow.
December, and I filled in for a classic metal show one night, and Chris and I did like the 5-hour show together. And so he hits me up a week later. He goes, "Hey, we got a great feedback from that. How would you like to co-host my Chris Aiken Presents spin-off show that I have?" And I was
Wow,
like,
wow,
"What?" And so I've been doing it now for over 2 months. Every Monday, we are live, and
wow,
we're on YouTube. Chris Aiken Presents, also on Rumble.
wow.
Yep, it's
Eric,
in.
I didn't know that about you. I'd love to have you back to talk about specifically about the podcast, help you promote that a little if you wouldn't
Thank
mind.
you, thank you.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. And real quick, I remember listening to some episodes they did like on Rat and all that. And the thing I got to kick about the whole feuding Rat thing is the fact that the drummer actually, who's not an original member, tried to sue Steven and Warren
Yep.
and Juan, who had been out of the band for 20 years. And because the drummer Bob sues all these guys, they find out Juan, who was out of the band for 20 years, actually ends up still owning a piece of band because the partnership was never dissolved.
Because two is greater than one, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah. Well, Eric, like I explained to you, this Zoom thing we're doing, I'm new to this too.
sure.
It cuts us off after some time, so we're going to wrap it up for David. I'd like to thank you for coming on, and I'm definitely going to have you back if you wouldn't mind. And next time we'll talk
Yeah.
all about the podcast. I think that'd be fun.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate all the promotion we could get for it. And
Okay,
thanks for
anytime,
having
my
me on
friend.
your
Let's
show.
keep in touch, okay? And I'll let you know when this goes up. It'll be probably going up in the next week. So take care, Eric. Thanks again.
Awesome. You take care as well, my friend.
Okay, bye
Bye
bye.
bye now.